This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us this evening for the learning of Torah Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach. As always, we begin Rishus D'Asra of Landau with continued appreciation to all of you for coming and making this shir possible. We'll dedicate tonight's shir to Rav Meir Shapiro on his 83rd yahrzeit. We do not have a sponsor this week, so we will do it on behalf of Klal Yisrael. L'ilui Nishmas Rav Meir Shapiro, the innovator of Daf HaYomi. Today was his 83rd yahrzeit. Also Rabbi Rosenberg, the champion of Shatnez. That Neshama should have a great aliyah. They should be Melitza Yosher for all of Klal Yisrael. We also learn L'Refuah Shalema for my Rebbetzin, Miriam Liba Bas Devora, and Shapsi Ben Shifra, who has an important scan tomorrow. They should have a L'Refuah Shalema B'Sach Shechel Yisrael. We learn with the tefillah that all those that have been touched by the dreaded makla, known as Yana Makla, and other related diseases should have a L'Refuah Shalema B'Sach Shechel Yisrael. All of us and our loved ones should always be healthy. We learn with the tefillah that those that are awaiting their shidduch should find their shidduch quickly and easily. Those that are awaiting children should be blessed with Zara Chaya V'Kayom, a healthy mommy, healthy baby. We should have Parnasa B'Revach U'V'Chavod and Lange Gesundte Zisa Shalom Bayis. As I mentioned, when I Mavis Sedra and listened to Kriyas HaTorah, so I tried to think of something new, and this year in Parshas Noach, I had the following thought. When learning about Kate's Kolbasa Bolafanai and the destruction of all of mankind during the flood, I had a hergish, an emotion that I should feel bad for all the millions of lives that died horribly in boiling water and all the suffering. Because the people that died left no one behind to mourn after them. It's a terrible thing when somebody dies and there's no one to mourn after them. The whole world, there was nobody except for Og. There was nobody to mourn after them. What a terrible thing. So you'll say, Rabbi Weiss, what are you feeling so bad? It says, Ba'avod Risha Amrina. When the wicked die, you sing. But remember we said that Andrulamusya Bala Ilam, V'Igreges Toivim V'Ram, there were millions of children and infants that died. Although they died because they were Mabzerim, like we explained last week, but still, there was so much suffering, and who cries over them? So I think when you listen to the laning of Parshas Noach, we could mourn after them. Nobody else is left to mourn after them. That's number one. The second thought that I had is that the word Mabel, if you rearrange the letters, it becomes an anagram of the word Bolain. Now the word Bolain means to zip it, to control yourself and shut your mouth. So it's interesting, the Mabel brought the ruination of the world. On the other hand, a person that's boilim piv, that knows how to keep their mouths closed and save a fight from spiraling out of the control, what does it say? Eino oila miskayim ela b'misha bolein piv b'shas meriba. Somebody who has the strength of inhibition to not allow a fight to escalate. It's a great thing. That's what it says. It says in the pasuk, Tole Eretz al Blima. Now literally that's the fact that if you look at a picture from a telescope, it's amazing. The huge globe is hanging, suspended on nothing. It's not on a tripod. It's not on steel supports. It's hanging there in air. Tola Eretz al Blima. The world is hung upon nothingness. A Blima, on nothing. But the Gemara says, Eina oila miskayim, the world only survives b'misha boilam piv b'shas meriva. So that can't be coincidental. Mabel is the destruction of the world, and Bolem is the kiyum of the world. Now let's get to this week's parsha. I will start off with a story. It says, "Vayei beracha," and you shall be for a blessing. So Rashi tells us that habrachos nesunos biyodecha. This is the idea of tzaddik geyser v'akadosh baruch hu mekayim. Hashem says, I hereby hand over you the power to give blessings. I remember when I was a little boy, and Rav Moshe would be by a chasana, or Rav Yaakov would be by a chasana, there would always be a line of younger brachim running and asking, could I have a bracha? That was a constant thing by weddings. And I remember Rav Moshe would quickly give blessings, and Rav Yaakov would talk about, you have to learn, there's no easy ride. But at tzaddik geyser v'akadosh baruch hu mekayim. Rabbi Yaakov also gave brachas, but first he gave a little talk, you got to learn. So, the following story took place in Borough Park. A wealthy family, husband sends out his wife, they were having some construction done in the house and he needed cash. He sent out his wife to go to the bank and bring back $20,000 in cash. That's $100. So she went out, but she had some errands to do also. So she went there and she stopped by the grocery and she stopped by the butcher. And to her consternation, when she got home, her wallet with the money was missing. So of course, that's $20,000. And, a wallet with $20,000 is not so easy to recover. But within the hour, while they were frantic about it, they get a call, and a man by the name of William asks if this is so-and-so. She had her license, and she said yes. He said he has a wallet full of money, he wants to return it. So she gave her address, she wanted to pick it up. No, I want to come to you. He came. And she opened it up. She figured there's going to be stuff missing. She counted $20,000. She looks at the guy in amazement and says, I want to give you a reward. So the guy says, I had an old mother, and she always told me that the blessings of a Jew works. That's what she always told me. So I want just the blessing. So she looks at him in amazement, and she and her husband, who was home, shower him with blessings. Okay. He goes home a happy man. They're amazed. He goes home a happy man. He gets home, he starts having cramps. And the cramps become intolerable. They have a doctor, he makes a house visit, and the doctor can't find anything wrong. He prescribes Danitol. And tells him, you got to get into bed. He said, this man had a work ethic. He never missed work. He said, absolutely, you cannot go to work. You could go to work, and on the way to work, you could collapse. We don't know what's going on. You can't go to work. He writes him a doctor's note, and the next day, for the first time maybe in his career, he doesn't go to work. And he's wondering, and he's saying to his wife, I don't understand this. My mother always told me the blessing of a Jew, and this should happen now. I don't understand it. There must be a reason. The next morning was 9/11. He worked on the 89th floor, and because he missed work, he wasn't there when the planes hit. This Maisa, which I never heard before, is brought down in the Nifloisecha Asicha. But I have to tell you, when we learn Hatzur Tomim Pa'alai, Hashem's works are perfect. V'chol derocha of Mishpat, and all his ways. You have to understand that they talked about the miracles of 9/11, and there were many of them. These are things that you couldn't know right away. Like, for example, I happen to know, we had a coffee shop in Staten Island, run by a fine man by the name of Mickey Simintov. His daughter worked in Cantor Fitzgerald. Now, the name Cantor Fitzgerald, anybody knows about 9/11, no one survived Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald was on the top floors, and anybody that went to work died because it was above the plane. Anybody that was above the plane perished. His daughter, a month before, was fired without cause from Cantor Fitzgerald. And they were in a tizzy about it. In a tizzy. I mean, here she had a good job and fired without cause. They said it was anti-Semitic. Of course, when it happened, Hatzir Tamim Palai, Kichol Dracha Mishpat, she definitely would have not survived. A young girl, a young Yiddish maiden. You have to know. But for our discussion, that's the idea of the Yeh Bracha, the power of the blessing of a Yid. That's why we should never take it for granted. There are people that come to Shul, and right after davening, they run out. They don't wait around to say Good Shabbos to people. It's a big mistake. You know how important it is to get Good Shabbos from people? First of all, when you wish people Good Shabbos, it says, I will bless those that bless you. So it's a beginning to give a Yid a blessing. But to get blessings from a Yid, you know, one of the knocks that they make on our Shul, the Agud of Staten Island, is that we make Mishaberes. Nowadays, nobody has time for anything. No, Mishaberes, what is this Mishaberes? I tell people, never take it lightly. People give you a bracha. You know what it means? A bracha al tia birchas kala head yibeinecha, the bracha from a Yid. I will move over to an entirely different area. Usually I don't discuss anything pilpalistic in these shiurim, the practical shiurim, how to better ourselves. But it says, Avram ben Tishim v'tesha shanim b'maylo yes pesara lasa. Avram was 99 when he did the Milah. So, of course, one of the more popular questions on this week's parsha is the Gemara tells us in Masechtas Yuma, on Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis, the Gemara tells us in Masechtas Yuma that Avram Avinu was Mekayim Kol HaTorah Kula before it was given. So Mekayim Kol HaTorah Kula before it was given, so how come he didn't mal himself earlier? Why did he wait till 99? Should have maled himself, especially Milah is a big thing. The Arla is moist, it's loathsome. So Avram Avinu should have taken care of it. So there are many schools of thought to answer this question. I believe that the Brisker Mahalach, I think it's the Brisker Mahalach. The Brisker Mahalach is that by definition a bris cannot be done unless it's with both sides. A bris is a covenant, a pact. You have to have a participating partner. If Hashem didn't give it to him yet, it cannot be a bris. That's the Brisker Mahalach. There's another Mahalach that you could do mitzvahs voluntarily as long as it's not a prohibition. A bris is making a chabura on yourself. A man is not allowed, a human is not allowed to make a chabura. It's not to inflict a wound. So therefore, Avram Avinu couldn't inflict a wound to do something voluntary. He had to be commanded to do it. That's another approach. But Rabbeinu Tam gives another answer. We know Gadol ha-mitzvah v'isa misha eina mitzvah v'isa. Greater is somebody that does something when they're commanded. Avram was mamtin, says the Rabbeinu Tam. Avram waited in order to be commanded. Now in this, it differs from other mitzvahs. Because other mitzvahs, you could do it and then do it again. But a bris, you only have one time to do it. You could do it's done bris, but that's not a bris. You have only one time to do it. So therefore, Avram waited to do it with the greater scar of Gadol Mitzvah V'Isa. That's Rabbeinu Tam's answer. With this Rabbeinu Tam, Rav Frank, the Rav HaRashi of Yerushalayim, Zichron L'Vracha, answers a very interesting shaila. Let's say a child became bar mitzvahed this Sunday. Motzi Shabbos, let's say he became bar mitzvah today. Motzi Shabbos, everybody went out to be Mekadosh Levana. So he wanted to be Mekadosh Levana. He's a child who wants to be Mekadosh Levana. So they tell him, don't be Mekadosh Levana now, be Mekadosh Levana later on the week when you're bar mitzvah. So what should he do? Should he do the mitzvah as soon as possible? Or should he wait till Tuesday when he becomes a bar mitzvah and then be Mekadosh Levana when he's bar mitzvah? So Rav Frank says no. Frank says you're only supposed to be Mekadosh Levana once. It's like Mila. You only make a bracha once. And since you only make a bracha once, he says, you see from here, you wait until you're bar mitzvah. That's what Rav Frank says. But then Rav Frank has another shayla. He says, what would be if the child was Mekadosh Levana Matzah Shabbos? Should he be Mekadosh Levana again on Tuesday? Interesting shayla. He was Mekadosh Levana. So Rav Frank brings a raya from a Magen Avram in Hilchos Shabbos. Magen Avram says, let's say somebody was Mekabel Shabbos early. You know, it was the late Shabboses. So Shkia is 9 o'clock or 8:30. So he is Mekabel Shabbos at 7. And he makes Kiddush. Problem is Tosfos Shabbos is only the Rabbana. But Kiddush is the Raisa. So what does he do? He made Kiddush at 7:45. That's Tosfos Shabbos. But the mitzvah of Zocher es Yom HaShabbos L'Kacha is a mitzvah of the Raisa. Says the Magen Avram, you don't have to say Kiddush again. The fulfillment, the Rabbanan that you did is enough to be Yaitzi Kiddush D'Oraisa. That's a Magen Avram. So I want to say the same thing, that the child that was Mekadosh Levana on Sunday when he was a cotton, he doesn't have to be Mekadosh Levana again on Tuesday when he's a gadol. Except that it's not so simple, because that's assuming that when the cotton was Mekadosh Levana on Sunday, he at least did a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. But there's a machlokes Rashi and Taisus when it says that it is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Is that a mitzvah d'Rabbanan on the child, or is that a mitzvah on the Rabbanan on the father to be mekadosh the child? But the child has no mitzvah at all. If the child has no mitzvah at all, then it's definitely not good. Now I'll tell you, and it's beyond the scope of the shir, but this has interesting ramifications. One is, let's say a child becomes bar mitzvah in the middle of Hanukkah. Or a child becomes bar mitzvah in the middle of Sukkot. He becomes bar mitzvah on day 4 of Hanukkah, or on day 4 of Sukkot. Should he make a shechiyanu on day 4? First 3 days it was a cotton. Now, especially if you hold that the shita that says that a cotton doesn't even have a mitzvah himself, Rabbanan, so then he should surely make a shechiyanu on day 4. And he should surely make a shechiyanu on the Lulav and Esrik on day 4. Now, this is a famous shal that's negaya every cotton that becomes bar mitzvah. Let's say somebody becomes bar mitzvah tonight. Should he make Birchas HaTorah tonight? Birchas HaTorah is the Raisa. In the morning when he said Birchas HaTorah, he wasn't about Chiyuva. So should he make Birchas HaTorah in the night? So Rav Shmuel David Friedman says in his Sefer State Sefer that you should have in mind a cotton that becomes bar mitzvah should have in mind when he says Ahavas Oilam in Mariv to be Yaitzi Birchas HaTorah. And he said that he once asked Rav Shmuel Arbach when he became bar mitzvah before he daven Mariv, did his father Rav Shlomo Zalman the Pesach Ador tell him anything? So he said, yeah, my father told me to have in mind Birchas HaTorah and Ahavas Oilam. That's what Shlomo Zalman Arbach told Rav Shmuel Arbach. Okay, interesting halachic interlude over here. Let's get back to the parsha. Vayovo Yapolit, and the great refugee, the great fugitive, not fugitive is the wrong word, the great escapee, came Vayagei LaAvram HaIvri. and told Avram Ivri the frightening news that Lot and his family were taken hostage, were taken captives, were taken as spoils of war by Nimrod, Kedar Laomer, and his cahoots, the four kings. So Rashi tells us who's the polit. That's Og. Og, the lone survivor besides Noach and his family from the flood. That's Og. Now, this, by the way, is a serious problem because Og therefore has a hand for all time in rescuing David HaMelech and the Melech HaMashiach. Because we know that it's from Lot's family, from his daughters, that came out, Ammon and Moav, the ancestry of Rus HaMoaviyah, and Namo HaAmmonis, the wife of Shlomo, which therefore allowed for the birth of the Melech HaMashiach, so it comes out, and that's a problem, because Og, we know, had wicked intent. Og wanted that Avram should die and he should marry Sarah. Og would fight with Moshe Rabbeinu. And we have a klal normally, Megalgalim Zechus al Yidei Zakai. That's why if you look in the Medrash, there's another opinion that the polit was Michael, Malach Michael. It's a machlokes. One opinion is Zoig, that's the popular opinion. Rashi made that popular. But there's another opinion that Og was Michael, and this, by the way, is not the only time where we have this kind of a problem. The other time, even more famous, is Memuchen. Vayomer Memuchen. So the Bavli says that Memuchen is Haman. But then again, we find that Haman thereby caused Vashti to die and paved the way for the Yeshua's Yisrael. Paved the way for Esther. And again, we have the problem of Megalgal and Schus al Yidei Zakai. How could it be via Haman? That's why the Yerushalmi argues with the Bavli, and the Yerushalmi learns that Memuchen was Daniel and not Haman. Smachlokas, Bavli, and Yerushalmi. Interestingly, though, that's not what I want to talk to you about. We know that Og, the Medrash says, why was Og called Og? Because he chanced upon Avram Avinu when Avram Avinu was making matzah. And even at that time, the hand matzah was circular, and it was an uga. Right? So because he saw him baking ugais matzahs, he became known as Og. That's the classic interpretation of the unusual name Og. It's interesting because Og, who saw the entire world die, the word Og is the same letters as Gova, to expire, like Vayigva Vayamas. So I always thought that was another reason why it was called Og, because it's the same letters as Gova, to expire, to die. But the Medrash says he was called Og because of the fact that he saw this peculiar round matzah being baked by Avram. So the Sefer Tzivtzei Tzaddik says, how odd. Og lived longer than almost anybody in the history of mankind. Other people lived long. Achia Shilaini, Serach Bas Asher, other people, Chur, other people lived very long. But Og lived over 1,000 years. So he lived over 1,000 years, and because he saw this cookie being baked, he was called Og. Says the Tzivtzei Tzaddik, in Loiv's entire lifetime, you want to know what the highlight of his long life was? Seeing the Tzaddik Avram bake matzah with his slavas and kedusha, says the Tzivtzei Tzaddik, that was the highlight of Loiv's life. It's an incredible statement. Of Og's life, I'm sorry. Of Og's life. That was the highlight of Og's life. Now, it's an important lesson, because sometimes people wonder, should I take my children to see a Rebbe? Maybe a Rebbe's Tish, a big Rebbe's Tish, the Skalena Rebbe is saying Tish, Ramshina Rebbe, to hear a Kiddush, a Havdalah, or to hear maybe the Baba of a Rebbe sales Svira, the bells of Rebbe sales Svira. You have to know that in 1,000 years, the highlight of Og's life was to see Avram Avinu with his Slavis Bek Matzah. Do you know what an impression on an neshama could make seeing your tzaddik do something with holiness? So to give you an idea of the impact of Kedusha, I want to share with you a Maisa from the Chavetz Chaim. It's interesting. Interesting Maisa from the Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim says there was a city near Vilna called Lipnishek. City near Vilna, a small darfel, a small hamlet called Lipnishek. And in the city of Lipnishek, there was a Mishnayos here. There were Mishnayos, a Chavos Mishnayos. They were up to Yavamas. And in the Beis HaMidrash was sitting a aged cantonist. Cantonist, we've spoken about this in the show, it's a terrible thing, that there was a quota of several children every year that was taken by the Russians away from their family as little children, usually children of the poor or orphans, that nobody protected them. They were taken to the Russian army, and they were separated for 25 years. Usually they got absorbed in the Greek Orthodox Church, which was the Russian belief, but they definitely were raised without any realization of Yiddishkeit. They remained on Amaratzim. And they were called derisively by people, disrespectful people, they were called Yevonim, because the Torah was Greek to them. They were called Yevonim. Anyway, he was sitting in the Beis HaMidrash. He didn't know anything, but he came to the Beis HaMidrash. He was an older man, knew nothing. His 25 years were up. He came home to his city in Lipnishek. His life was ruined, and he's sitting in the shul. At least he came to shul, and he hears them learning Yavamas, and they kept on saying Yavam, 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 and he thought that they were making fun of him and calling him Yavam, Yavam, Yavam. So finally, the last time he heard Yavam, he couldn't take it anymore. He went over to him. You're sitting here and learning. You have no respect. You make fun of me. You think it's my fault that I was taken away from my home while you had opportunity. How shameful of you. All of you should throw away your Gemaras. So they calmed him down, and they said they weren't saying Yavam. They were saying Yavam. And he didn't believe them. So they showed him Yavam. The only thing is he couldn't read. And they told him, what does it help? I can't read. I don't believe you. Right there and then, they started teaching him the Aleph Beis. The Chavetz Chaim said he lived to see this man have the title of the Goin from Lipnishek. And he said it all came because he sat in shul. If he wouldn't have came to sit in shul, who knows what would have been. Ashrei, Yoshrei Veisech. Even sitting in shul has its holiness. People wonder what they should do sometimes with their children on a Chol Hamoed, on a Motzei Shabbos. Taking children, people wonder, maybe I should go out to a Thursday night or a Motzei Shabbos to an Agudi convention. Showing your children Gedolim is a very worthwhile endeavor. Giving them the influence of seeing Kedusha. I remember people would come to a convention, and Rav Moshe would walk in, and you heard 1,000 people jump up. Children saw that. It made an impression upon them. I still have it in my mind. I remember Rav Moshe and Rav Yaakov and Rav Shneur Kotler walking in to a convention, and people jumping up. It left an indelible impression upon me. But there's another question. It says, and by the way, the fact that we call Oig Hapolit, the one who escaped, why was Oig spared? Why did Oig live for 1,000 years? More than 1,000 plus. I mean, he had such base ideas like that Avram should die and he should marry Sarah. Does a man like this deserve to live for over 1,000 years? It would seem to me that the answer is in what we call him. Why do we call him Vayavai Apolit? So you'll say, no, he escaped from the war with Kedolaim. No, but we say it means that he was Polit from the Mabel. Why was he called a Polit? Because Hashem wanted to have a Eid Re'iyah for a millennium to let people know about Shilumas Rishoim Tireh. It says in the pasuk. Remember when there was a mafia rub-out, Rav Miller used to say, you have to see Shilumas Rishoim Tireh. You see the payment of the wicked. Hashem wanted that Oig should give the Messiah for 1,000 plus years that the world was corrupt and it was all destroyed. No, there wasn't a question about it. That's why in all the cultures there's history of the flood. The Chinese have it. All the cultures have it. Well, he lived for 1,000 plus years. And the same thing we find that Paro lived a very long time. Right? Everybody died in the Yam Suf except Paro. That's what we say in davening. Echad mehem loy noisa. One of them not noisa. One survived. That's how we read it. Echad mehem, one, loy. No, noisa. He survived. That's Paro. Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer says that Paro lived to be the king of Nineveh at the time of Yonah. Why did Hashem give Paro such longevity? So that Paro, same thing, that Paro should be able to testify firsthand about what happened. Very big thing, what happened at the Yam Suf. It's an important testimony. But there's another kasha. It says, Vayavai Apolit, Vayagei Lavrom Ivri. It's an interesting title. What's Pshat Avram HaIvri? Right? People have titles. Yosef HaTzadik, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yaakov Avinu. Avram is also known as Avram Avinu, but he has another title, Avram HaIvri. What's HaIvri? So it says, Kol ha'olam be'ever zeh, va'avram be'ever acher. That Avram Avinu stood against the entire world. He lived in a world that was pagan, not belief in one God, and he stood up against the entire world. So there's a kasha. It says Avram's name many times before this. Why is this the place that we give Avram the title of Avram HaIvri, with his meeting with Oig? You know, ask this kasha. It's obvious kasha. You know, ask this kasha the Satmar Rebbe. Friedrich Satmar Rebbe. Zecher Tzadik v'Kodesh Uvracha Tzchus Yogan Aleinu. He said, "What's episode over here? Avram is called Avram HaIvri." The answer is simple. It says that Oig went and told Avram, so that Avram will go and rescue, and Avram will die, and he'll marry Sarah. What, he thought that Avram would fight 4 kings and a massive army with just light and a few Kail guys? I mean, what was the Havamina? The answer is that Oig knew that Avram was Avram HaIvri. He wasn't afraid to go against the entire world. And he knew to rescue his nephew, Avram would go on such a suicide mission. Because he was Avram HaIvri. I just want to add, humbly, like a peewee adding to a giant, that also there was a similarity between Avram and Oig. Oig survived when his whole society was killed. He was also against the entire world. So that was a similarity between Avram and Oig, in between Vayavai Apolit and Avram HaIvri. I think in the 30 plus years that I'm giving this shir, with the help of Hashem, B'li Ayin Hara, this Mashiach, Amirat Hashem, I never spoke about the animals by the Bris Bein Abasar. I just think I never spoke about it. In all the years, if you go back, there are people that are knowledgeable in my tapes, they could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I never spoke about the different animals in the Bris Bein Abasar. Now I want to share with you, it's a very unusual story. What happens? Avraham Avinu says, "Bameh Eda Ki Rishena," how will I know that my children will inherit the land? Vayomer Elav, and Hashem told him, "Choli egla mishuleshes, ve'ez mishuleshes, v'ayil mishulesh." Take a calf, a goat, a ram, v'tor v'geizel, a turtle dove, and a pigeon. Vayikach lo yeskol eila, he took these, vayavater oisam batovech, and under divine instruction, he cut in half the calf, the goat, and the ram. Vayiten ish bisra likrois re'on, and put the two halves opposite one another. V'esatzipa lo yivasa, and the birds he didn't divide. What's going on over here? What's this all about? So Rabbi Yechiel Michal Halevi Epstein, who we know as the Aruch HaShulchan, Ramosha treasured the Aruch HaShulchan greatly. He would say that the Aruch HaShulchan was a Rav. So his psak was with the experience of the Rabbonis. Moshe treasured the Aruch HaShulchan greatly. So the Aruch HaShulchan gives the following hezber to this unusual setup that Avraham Avinu took the calf, the goat, the ram, cut it in half, put one opposite the other, and the birds he didn't cut. It says as follows. He says, first of all, as Rashi tells us, these animals represent the different empires. He says the eagle represents the empire of Egypt, the Egyptian empire. He quotes a pasuk. It says in the pasuk, "Eglo yafyafa Mitzrayim." A beautiful calf is Mitzrayim. He says the ayil represents the empires of Madai and Pras, the empire of Persia and Medes. Like it says, "Ayil asher ro'isa balakarnayim malchei Madai Ufras." And the goat represents the great empire of Greece, like it says in the pasuk, "Vatzafer hasor melech Yavan." He says Yisrael, the birds, the yaina, represents Klal Yisrael, like it says in the pasuk. It says al kanfe yaina. Klal Yisrael's nimshla l'yaina, yainasi b'chag ve'asem. But he says, interesting. We all assume when we read the pasuk that he split the calf and he put one piece of the calf opposite the other. He split the goat, put one opposite the other. He split the ram, put one opposite the other. It says the HaShulchan, no! It says ish likras rayeyu. A man opposite its one opposite its other, its friend. He says he put the half of the eagle opposite the half of the goat. Half of the ayil opposite half of the goat, etc. He put one opposite the other one. And he says the lesson is as follows. Whenever one empire conquered the other, it absorbed it. So that the Egyptian empire was absorbed by the Persian empire. The Persian empire was absorbed by the Greek empire. But as Satzipur Loibasa, Klal Yisrael will never be absorbed by another empire. Heinam levadod yishkan. Uvagoyim lo yischashav. Will never be in the melting pot of another nation. And that was the answer to B'moed HaKirushan, how Klal Yisrael will survive. That's how Aruch HaShulchan explains the lesson of the Bris Bein HaBasar. Fascinating explanation. Now we know that in the Yodaya Teda Kigeya Zaracha Be'eretz Lo Lahem, that there's a lot of prophecy. In the Bris Bein HaBasar. But I want to just point out to you for this shir one. Yodoya Teda. Like they say, what's the double Lcha? Yodoya Teda. So Yodoya, you should know because of Teda, because of B'moed HaKirushan. That's why Kigeya Zarach Be'eretz Lo Lahem. There's all kinds of hints and remazim. But one thing I want to share with you now. Yodoya Seda Kigeya Zarach Be'eretz Lo Lahem. Now, how come the pasuk starts off initially B'lashon Yachid, Kigeya Zaracha, and then it ends off Be'eretz Lo Lahem in the Lashon Ram? It should say Kigeya Zaracha Be'eretz Lo Lahem, or Kigeya Zarachem Be'eretz Lo Lahem. So the Medrash Shmuel says something profound. He says when it says Be'eretz Lo Lahem, it's referring to the Mitzrayim. That when they're going to go get down and be a ger, it's not going to be their land either. Because Yosef will have bought up all the land in Mitzrayim when they didn't have money for food, and he moved them all around so that the Shvatim shouldn't feel like strangers, so everybody was moved around. So it's Kigeya Zaracha Be'eretz Lo Lahem in a land that's not theirs. That's not the Egyptians. You see the prophecy that's there in every word of the Bris Bein HaBasar. And now, I'm going to speak to you about something that's very complex. It's complex. It's intricate. It's mysterious. And it's also a critical lesson for life. One of the most complex individuals in Tanakh is Light. Light is a study in contradiction. Let's look first at the bright side of Light's life. And boy, Light has a lot going for him. A lot going for him. I would think that somebody could be in awe of Lech's accomplishments. First of all, the Torah Shlema says categorically, and let me give you a quote of the Torah Shlema. Oma Lech tzadik gomer haya v'Isaac b'Torah. Lech was a tzadik gomer and he was Isaac b'Torah. It's a Torah Shlema from the Medrash. In the Zohar, it says, Vayelech itoy Lech, when Avram was given the hard command of Lcha to abandon everything that he knew and everything that he was familiar with. It says, Vayelech itoy Lech, says the Zohar, Lilmoid Memaisa. We know that in one swoop, Lech could have inherited all of Avram's wealth. When Avram told the Egyptian king that Sarah was his sister, Lech could have said he's lying. Lech could have been a hero, but he was Shazak. Now, let's look at Lech's accomplishments. Lech had a daughter. He raised a daughter that was so dedicated to Chesed that even though it was a capital offense to do Chesed in Sidon, she risked her life to take care of a poor person. So they put surveillance upon her and caught her, and then they coated her with honey, and she died al Kiddush Hashem, stung to death. Who raised such a child? Lot, who followed in the footsteps of Avram and set up a home of chesed, even though he wasn't married to a Sarah. He was married to a wife who didn't want to give salt, and told people, my husband went to borrow salt. Here was Lot, who in Sodom practiced chesed and risked his life to invite the Malachim. Here was Lot, that when the mob came and the Malachim told him that they were coming to destroy Sodom, Lot followed in the footsteps of Avram to save Sodom V'Amorah, argued the entire night with the Malachim in defense of Sodom, and when they came to attack the Malachim, Lot, knowing that would be curtains for millions of people, offered his daughters instead to save millions of people from being nuked. Eventually, Lot would succeed where Avram failed. Avram failed to save Sodom. Lot would save the city of Tyre, an entire city. People would say, that's Lot HaTzadik you're talking about. You're talking about one of the greats. That's what people would say, if they didn't learn Rashi. Rashi tells us a much more seamy side to Lot. It says, Vayisa Lot Mikedem, that when Lot left Avram, he traveled Mikedem, and Rashi says, Mikadmoino Yishalaylam, he traveled away from God, the one who was here before the world. Rashi tells us, V'Hashem Omar El Avram Achrei Hipored Leit Mi'imai. Hashem said to Avram after Lot left. So Rashi says, Kol Zman Sharosha Imai, because as long as the wicked one was with him, Hoya Hadibar Parish Mimen. So the only time Avram Avinu got a vision with God and got a communication with God is only when Lot left, because Kol Zman Sharosha Imai Hoya Parish Mimen. So here Rashi HaKadosh is calling Lot to Russia. Whoa. So what happened? When did he go from being a tzaddik to a Russia? What's going on? So one of the classics, the Tzedel HaDerech, gives the following, which I think is the accepted understanding. Lot Dayan Tzadikaya, because Rashi himself says in a parenthesis in some editions, it says Vayera El Avram, that Hashem appeared to Avram, but Lot was with him. So Rashi says at that time Lot was still a tzaddik. So when did Lot go from a tzaddik to a Rasha? It's frightening. The text says, "Adayin tzadikaya ad sheyoboy leMitzrayim." He was a tzaddik until he came down Mitzrayim. The winds of Egypt were so immoral and made such an impression upon Lot that it corrupted him. Although they were only in Mitzrayim for 3 months, the Medrash says. But it was so decadent and so magnetic that 3 months in downtown Burbank of Egypt made a lasting impression on Lot's neshama. Now don't be surprised. Chazal say, we all say in the Haggadah, Ani v'loy malach, Ani v'loy sorah. Hashem says, I went down to do Makas Bechiris. I am not a malach. I am not a fiery angel. Farshim say over there, why? What's so bad with angels? Hashem always uses angels. Says the land was so corrupt that even angels would have been corrupted. That was the environment of Egypt. So much so, we all know that it says in this week's parasha, Hinei no yadati. Now I know. Ki eishis yafas marat. Avram said when they went down to Mitzrayim, now I know you're beautiful. So Rashi says because of a Maisa. What's Rashi referring to? That Avram came and saw her reflection in the Nile and saw that she was Yiska, that she had a shine. She was, after all, one of the most beautiful people in the history of mankind. Now he knows. But the Emes Yaakov, now there's several Emes Yaakovs. There's Emes Yaakov written by Rabbi Yaakov, Tzadik Kosh Baruch. But there's another Emes Yaakov written by the Baal Nesivos. Tzadik Baruch, Schusi Yogan Elaine and Kosh Baruch. The Baal Nesivos says, Ati Yadati, Einei no Yadati, because even Avram was influenced by the immorality to an extent that now he noticed Sarah's beauty. Even Avram was influenced. But the influence on Lot was lasting. It was lasting to the point, and this is frightening, it was lasting to the point that, listen to these Ma'amorei Chazal, in Bereshis Rabbah it says, Lot nisava lebnaisav, or bnaisav Lot nisava Lot. Lot hankered after his daughters. You have to understand the family dynamics. Lot had a wife who was, Edith was not a very good wife, while his daughters were very righteous. There was znus in his mind. Now, it says that the first time Lot slept with his daughters, he was shikar, and he didn't know. But when he woke, he knew, and the second night he shouldn't have drank. But he drank the second night. The Marin Huryas, Taf Yudam Ebei says, L'tavo Yavakesh Nifrad. For desire, the one who separated himself, sought, says the Gemara, that's light. Separated from Sdaim. L'tavo Yavakesh Nifrad. And the pasuk finishes off, B'chol Sushia Yizgala. His mum will be revealed by Chol Sushia. Sushia is those that learn Torah. Torah Mateshes Koicha Shaladim. In every base of Medrash, people will know that Lot slept with his daughters. He didn't mean to, but he slept with his daughters. Because that's why he went down to Stein. What does it say? It says, why did Lot go down to Sidon? It says that every word in the pasuk refers to znus. He saw Stein was a free society. You have to know, Rav Wolbe, the great Baal Musar, the Alei Shur, says, why do you think Lot went to Stein? They made up that they were separating, and Lot went to Stein. Why do you think Lot went to Stein? He says, without question, in Lot's mind, he went to be Mekarev Stein. And he did. He became a shayfet. He did Gemilas Chasadim. He went to be Mekarev Stein. But the Alei Shur says, underneath everything, there was something in him that saw the Kikar Hayarden. He saw the free society, the immorality of Stein, and that appealed to him. So Lot didn't realize it. Lot thought he was going down to be Mekarev. But what was really pulling him, what was really tugging him, was the freedom, the free spirit, the hashkasa of Sidon. That's a frightening thing. That's a frightening thing. To the point with all of his accomplishments, Rashi calls him a Rasha. This is Baal Musar Movement 101. This is what it's all about. Here's a person. He's graduating yeshiva, and he wants to go out to the wild blue yonder to be Mekarev. He is sure that it's in order to do kiruv work. And it's for sure true also. But there's a layer deeper underneath that he wants to escape the rigors of peer pressure. He goes somewhere else. It might be okay to have a television in the home. Nobody will look down on it. It might be all right not to go every day, 3 times a day to Minyan. Who knows if there'll be a Minyan every day? You have to know what's lurking under the surface. You have to know. Look what happens when a person makes a mistake and goes for the wrong reason. What happened to Lech's family? His daughter was executed. 2 of his married children died. His wife became a pillar of salt, and he lost all of his property, all of his wealth. Now, don't think that that's an isolated occurrence. It's not. Here's a person. He's infused with a mission to go on Aliyah. And he thinks he's doing it all for the right reasons. So he goes, he uproots his family, away from family, and he goes. And then you fast forward 30 years, and several of his children went off the derech. Took them away from the society of Borough Park, of Monsey, of Passaic, and moved them to where they were not used to. He went to an area that was freer, Kedusha's Eretz Yisrael. And he watched casualties in his children, because he has to know what he was really going for. Scary. Here's a person that is Eish Lahava against a person in the shul who's talking during davening. Whoa! Chaytei! Avayna Gadol Min Esau. He wages a battle. He really doesn't like the person. He's really jealous of him too. He's always happy and having a good time. He's not happy. But he's waging a war against his talking in shul. Because he doesn't think what's below the surface. He really doesn't like the person. He's really jealous of the person. You have to know what's lurking behind the surface. It's a great lesson of Light. Light's life is very complicated. And I'm sure Light will get a very big Olam Haba. Might have had a big Ganem. Afterwards, he accomplished big things like that. He's one of the ancestors of David HaMelech and Melech Mashiach. Rus HaMayaviyah. V'Hashem Omar El Avram Acharehi Porei Loit Mei Imai. Before we say the final thought for the evening, again, I want to thank all of you for coming and ask you to spread the awareness of this shir to others. We will have Ma'ariv here, Yetz Hashem, at 1/4 after. We're perfectly set up for it. We did not have a sponsor this week. If you would like to sponsor the share that goes around the world by tape, by CD, by Kalalashint or anytime.com dollar share, it's $300, $360 to be a postal sponsor. Also, I want to make you aware that on both Kalalashint and TorahAnytime.com, we have a share on Orchos Chaim LaRosh. It's now over 75 shiurim on Orchos Chaim LaRosh as we're heading down towards the finish line. We're up to number 114 now in Orchos Chaim LaRosh. You can get it on TorahAnytime.com. Watch it by going to Musar and Self-Improvement. And on Kalalashint by going to 4 for Musar, and then selection 4 for Orchos Chaim LaRosh. All the shiurim are archived there. Of course, you can get my Daf Yomi, as tomorrow we start Hazov in Bava Metzia on both Kalalashint and TorahAnytime.com. And Mishnah Yomis is in its completion on Kalalashint and is being now transferred day by day, audio, to TorahAnytime.com as well. Again, to make a dedication, 718-916-3100 or rmmwsi@aol.com. V'Hashem Omar el Avram acharehi pared loit me'imai. Hashem said to Avram after Lot separated, because there was machlokes, start of strife. Avram said, now it's time to separate before it gets out of hand. So it says that after Lot left, Hashem spoke to Avram. All the while that Lot was there, and he was a Rasha, it blocked communications. Says the Oitzer Penini HaTorah and others, that although Avram realized that he was not able to communicate with Hashem because of Lot, until Machlokes, Avram would not send Lot away, even though it meant that he wouldn't be able to communicate with the Shekhinah. So I want to point out that in next week's parasha, we all know that when the 3 Arab-like people came, Hashem was speaking to Avram, and Avram said, pardon me, Hashem, excuse me. He put the hold button on the Shekhinah and said, I got to take care of the Arabs. And from there we learn out, Gedoyla hachnasas archim yosim mekabalas b'nei Shekhinah. It's the same thing over here. Gedoyla, the taking care of Lot, yosim mekabalas b'nei Shekhinah. B'besar chal tezalei. So even though taking care of Lot, his nephew, who was orphaned because Haran died by the Kivshan Aish of Nimrod, meant sacrificing, not communicating with Hashem, not having Kabbalah's B'nai Shechina, but Mibesar Chal Tesaling, not hiding from your own flesh and blood, is more important. It's a big thing. People have relatives that are struggling, and they do other things, Chinese auctions, and give Sifrei Torah. Mibesar Chal Tesalim. It's more than Kabbalah's B'nai Shechina. Very important lesson. We have over here the CDs from Bereshis and Nayach if people missed those shiurim. And Marv, in a few moments, Reb Chananya ben Akash Omar, Ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu, L'Zaka Yisrael Yisrael, L'Fikar Chebelem Torah Mitzvahs, Shenemar, Adonai Chofetz, L'man Tzidka, Yagdul Torah V'Yadir.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.